Okay, this is a video about writing a function in Python. The first thing I'm going to do is put a comment like we always do, just to say that we're writing a function. And I'd like you to write this function in Python yourself and make sure that it runs and see how it works. The idea is that we can learn about functions here. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do when you're writing a function is you need to define the function. So you write def, which defines the function, and you can use a meaningful variable name or a meaningful name for the function. Okay, so I might say this, call this one say hello. Okay, so and you'll notice that the function comes up in orange and the name of the function will come up in blue. Now you can use any name you like, as long as it's not a keyword that's used in Python somewhere else. You can call your function whatever you like, right? Now I'm going to put two brackets at the end, and after the two brackets at the end I'll put a colon, but inside the two brackets I want people to send 2 bits of information to this function, right? And those 2 bits of information, they're called parameters. So I want when the user enters some information, 2 parameters or 2 bits of information are sent to this function and they come into this function. And I'll call the first one first and I'll call the second one last. Okay, so we've got first and last. That's going to be our 2 parameters for our function. Right, now what are we going to get it to do? We're going to get our function to say print, simple little statement in here. Let's say hello, comma, first, and then let's do another print statement, print, I will call you Mr. Full Stop, that'll do, okay, comma, last. Okay, so what this function is going to do is it's going to get some input statements from further down in the program, and the input statements are going to get the first name and the last name of a person, and it'll say hello to the first name, and it'll say I will call you Mr. whatever the person's name is as last name. You could put Ms, you could put Mrs, whatever. For the purpose of this program, I'm just going to put Mr. So that's it. We've written a tiny little function there. Now, the beauty of this function is it's a little program within the program of Python that won't run unless you call upon it. Unless you say, I want to run, say hello, and you give it 2 parameters. And when you're doing that, they're actually called arguments. So when you actually run this and say, run the program, say hello, and here are my 2 arguments, then this program will run. Now, you might say, why wouldn't you just do 2 print statements underneath your input statements? Well, because you can call this program over and over and over again. So you might use this same little program with 100 different people, all right? So you don't want to have to type it 100 times. So you type it once in here as a function, and then you can run that again and again. Okay, so let's have our input statements. And let's put, let's call our first variable first name. First name equals input, in brackets, please enter your first name. I'm going to go colon space, that'll do. There's my first one. Now, I'm going to do the surname. I'm going to do the same thing, input, in brackets, please enter your family name or your surname. Space. Right, so now we've got 2 simple inputs, and those inputs are going to be sending information up to this function to run this function. However, what you'll notice is this one I've called first name and this one I've called surname, but up here I've called the parameters first and last. And that's okay, all right? That's okay that they're different, because in a program, users might have different variable names and they may not know what these 2 parameter names are until they decide to use the function. So it doesn't matter that it's not the same. And this is how we would run it. We would write say underscore hello, and then we would put 2 brackets there, and we're going to put in our arguments. Now, first argument is called first name, and our second argument is called surname. Okay, so we're going to use the variable, the information here from the input. We're going to put it into there as an argument. we're going to get this second one here, and we're going to put it in here as an argument. And we're going to run this function called say hello, and we're sending these two arguments. Now, when that runs, it sends it back up here to this function, and it changes that first name into the variable first. And it changes this surname into the variable last. It's kind of the same as if I wrote this, as if I wrote first equals first name. Okay, now I don't need to write that, it's going to do it automatically up there, right? But essentially that's what it would be doing. Okay, now if I run that program, I'm just going to go File, Save As, and I might call this on the desktop, I might call this new function. Okay, and I'm just going to go Save, and I'm going to run it, run module. Okay, please enter your first name, right? Nick, and your last name, May. And it says, hello Nick, I will call you Mr. May. Okay, so it's actually run that function. Now, like I said, in a little program like this, obviously you could just put the print statements underneath. But if you think about you're using this same program for 100 people, then you don't have to rewrite this 100 times. So that's a simple function to start with. I'll put a little comment in here. In the brackets are two parameters. All right, so they're parameters. When you run a function, it is called calling it. Okay, I might put that down on the next line with a hash so that you can see when you run a function, it's called calling the function. The arguments, the parameters are called arguments. Okay, so there's two little notes there just for remembering what a function is. Okay, so that's one way that I could run a function. Now, you could do many different arguments in here. You could have 5 or 6 different arguments in here. You could do no arguments in here whatsoever, and it'll automatically assign them. You can do these for maths. You can do this for lots of different things. In fact, I've probably got a maths example here I can show you. So let's just quickly go and have a quick look here and see if I've got a function file in here. I'm sure I do. Let's go down here to F. Okay, F, down. There's lots of function files here. Here's a function file here. And this one's a good example, right? So this example is an example based on having a function that has an X and a Y parameter. And down here, you haven't got X and Y, you've got distance and time. So you've got distance equals an integer input. Please enter the spelled wrong, distance. Covered in meters, and this one is time integer. Please enter the time taken in seconds. All right, and this is going to work out meters per second. Essentially, it's going to work out meters per second. So distance is going to be our first argument that goes into there. Time is going to be our second argument, and then we run that function, and it'll go up and say, all right, we're going to call that parameter X and parameter Y. Then it's going to say Z equals parameter X divided by parameter Y. Then we're going to print Z meters per second, right? So let's just run this. I'll have to save it. Yep. And let's enter the distance. Let's say 200 meters. And the time taken, we're going to say 25 seconds. Usain Bolt running, right? So he's running 8 meters per second. Okay, so that's how a function works. Essentially, it has arguments as parameters. You put things into those parameters, send it to the program, and the program runs. What I would like you to do in class today is to write a simple function. In fact, I want you to write this simple function right here. I want you to take your time, write it in Python, make sure that it works, make sure that everything's okay. And if you get that finished, you can then write this simple function here and try and get that to run as well. So you'll have 2 functions in Python, and you will be learning about functions. That's it. Make sure you've got those 2 by the end of the lesson, and then I'll see you next week.